easy ways of combating the media perception is to form a media committee, if you haven't done it already, with brothers and sisters with expertise in certain areas, and offer a list to the media. They want to talk to somebody on hijab, on Sharia, on Palestine, on Iraq, on Gaza, on all manner of things, and offer them a list. Because quite often there will be brothers and sisters in here who have great expertise in certain areas, who can articulate that as well. So that may be something that you might want to think of, because quite often when news is breaking, the media will want to talk to somebody instantly, and they might not be able to get hold of somebody immediately, and then the opportunity is lost and it's moved on. There's been some extraordinary things happening with your neighbours in Australia, where there have been moves to ban the burqa, to not ban the burqa, and quite frankly, I don't think Australian politicians know what the burqa is. I've been to Australia a few times and I've never seen a burqa in Australia. And that might be something obvious just to tell the media as well, because they might not be aware of it. Quite often the media make mistakes because of ignorance, not because it's deliberate Islamophobia. Sometimes it is Islamophobic, but quite often it's out of ignorance.
This isn't really a question, but it may be a suggestion, and that is, since we're on the subject of the media, and they seem to be getting a lot of things wrong, why don't we Muslims, actually take on to teach them what is Islam? I mean, then we can't possibly print those things.
You told me earlier today there are 42 different nationalities represented in the Muslim community in New Zealand. One of the things to do and to think about, because food is a great unifier, is maybe one day to hold a day of meeting the media and off the record, but remember there's no such thing as off the record, but call it an off the record chance to meet the media, and let them sample all the different foods and just talk to them and engage with them.
We actually have an open day every year, and that one has just passed, which was really very successful, and it's been going on now for quite a few years. So in conjunction with that or something else, I think that would be a really good idea, because at that time we do have the multi-ethnic, if you like, food. And the same thing could happen, or even included in that. So, thank you.
Do we have any questions from the brothers? Yes?
My name is Arvind, and I'm a Hindu. I'm probably the only person, representing my community out here. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak over here and sharing the stage. When I entered into this room, I saw there was a big divide between the room. The women were supposed to sit on that side and men on this side. And then there was this gentleman, I think he's somewhere in the room. He came in and he said, well, this is a learning center, we need to eradicate these walls and have a common platform. So congratulations for doing that. I think it's a brilliant idea. And however, what I thought that there is a big divide amongst the Muslims in terms of the interpretation of Islam. Some think that, well, this is the way to go, while the others think that, no, we should share a common stage. So 2 billion Muslims around the world, and yet we have contradictions, in terms of the teaching of Islam. I think it's high time we need to eradicate those problems and have everyone on the same wavelength in terms of what Islam is, what are the teachings, so that when you enter to any of these conferences, you don't see a divide and you don't see people wondering, okay, whether we should do this or that. There should be common law followed amongst everyone. That's what my suggestion would be. And I have got one more point to say. 2 billion Muslims in the world. I think the world we live in today is dependent on science and technology. I'm a Hindu, I say this for myself as well. The world we live in, from cars to these buildings, electricity, mobile phones, you name it. We don't live in the same world as 1400 years ago people used to live, or for my religion, some would say 5,000 years ago people used to live. The world has changed. And with this changed world, we need to change ourselves as well. Unfortunately, I don't know, I may be wrong, but if someone could correct me, that how many scientists, scholars, great people who have changed lives of the masses in the world have Islam produced in the last 2 centuries.
Wow,
I think that this is something which it's high time. Yes, you do the prayers 5 times, you follow the religion, but at the same time, we need to learn.
Well, the very first hospital in the world was in Baghdad. I was just talking to a sister from Gaza. There are more PhDs per head of population in Gaza among the Palestinians than anywhere else in the world. There is a book, and it's, maybe somebody can get you this book about 1,000 great inventions from Muslims. I don't intend giving you a history lesson, but Muslims were in the frontier of maths, of science, of medicine. And, you know, again, it's our fault. We hide our light under a bushel, and we should be promoting more about what Islam has contributed to the world, especially in terms of maths and science and medicine, not in the last 200 years, in the last 1400 years, as I said, the very first ever field hospital in the world was set up in Baghdad. And, you know, there's some, you know, maybe that's a theme to think about doing in the future, exactly what Islam has contributed, because maybe we should shout more about what we have contributed in terms of architecture, history, science, medicine. But thank you for raising that.
Just one more point. A similar point can put.
Well, it's a Q&A, it's not points. You're stealing my thunder here.
That the Hindus have invented a lot in the past. I think it's time we should not rest on the past laurel and past achievements. Yes, that was done 1400 years ago, 200, 300 years ago, but it's time that we do something that, you know, I mean, I really don't see one single invention which has changed the course of human history now. I mean, the world we live in today, unfortunately, is dependent on science and technology. Yes, we have achieved it, but I think it's time that our kids
You need to visit Pakistan. There are things that have been invented there every day. It's one of the most amazing countries I've ever been to, because there is such a can-do attitude. If it's broken, we'll fix it. If it hasn't been invented yet, we will invent it now. The most incredibly industrious people. But thank you very much for that. On the sister side? Yes?
Thank you, Yvonne, for sharing your inspiring experience with us. My question is perhaps based on your personal experience and your professional experience as a journalist currently, and having lived in the Northern Hemisphere, what exactly is the situation with among the non-Muslim world in the Northern Hemisphere, especially? Because you always hear about how negative their thoughts, their thinking about Muslims. Is it really that bad as it's shown on TV? Like, for the benefit of as like myself who's not been in America or in the UK? What's the current situation?
The development of Muslims.
Please tell us the question as well. We are not reading it.
Oh, sorry. The sister's asking about the state of the Muslim communities in Britain and America, and the reality is it varies from region to region. I live in Scotland, and there's very active Scottish Muslims there, and they have absolutely no problem with being Scottish and being Muslim, and they don't see a contradiction in that at all. One of the government ministers is a Muslim, and when they're celebrating Burns Night, which is a traditional Scottish event, he's there in his own tartan and his kilt and swaggers, you know, like a Scotsman will in a kilt. They have no problems about their identity, and very much so with Muslims in Ireland and Wales. But there is a lack of confidence in the Muslim communities in England, and I think part of that has to do with English identity, which is quite a vague thing. It's not specific. I think that's because England itself has been invaded so many times that the culture has just gone, and there isn't a strong identity as there is in Wales, where they have their own language. In Scotland they've got several different languages, and in Ireland as well. So there's the Muslim communities in Scotland in particular seem to be beyond integration and now into citizenship, and you know, really seem to be developing. I would, and I know some of you won't like this, but I would question the need for Muslim schools. Because at the end of the day, excellent centres like this and mosques like this, you're running, I went up and saw the educational section, and all the Islamic nourishment that our children need can come from the mosques and Islamic centres. So is there any need to have Muslim schools? Somebody said there was a Muslim nursery here, but it's of such an excellent standard that non-Muslims attend it as well. And so I'm just, you know, I'm just wondering, in terms of developing and getting beyond integration and on to citizenship, whether we could do it better in Britain. And I really think that we could. There are communities that are living in Islamic bubbles because they feel under fire, and you can understand it in some ways. But you know, as Muslims, we shouldn't be victims. We should be survivors, and we shouldn't remain in Islamic bubbles. If we were meant to confine ourselves to these Islamic bubbles, Islam would never have gone beyond Mecca. So, you know, we need to reach out, and it's wonderful to see non-Muslims in here tonight who are interested in what you're doing, and that's great. So I think, despite all the lurid headlines that there are in the British media, I think that some Muslim communities need to step out more and make more of an effort in the country that they're living. Yes?
I'm not really asking you questions, sister. I'm just thinking for myself and for all of us. And our friend here comes from the same country as I do. And I belong to a profession where I know 1400 years back, in our holy book, there is something about the sperm and the development from then onwards till the baby is born and till we die. So Islam has always been there in science. And as far as changing lives is concerned today, if my friend goes and looks at how many number of scientists are working who are Muslims in NASA, go and look at the medical journals what the Muslim surgeons, physicians, psychiatrists, one here, right here, have changed the life of millions of people. So Muslims are there right in front of us, doing wonderful things, changing the lives of people. Maybe they're not advertising themselves, but they're all there. So I thought I would just make everybody know that we are doing a lot as Muslims.
Thank you for that. Yes?
So back to your story about Taliban, perhaps I missed a part about some details about the person, the man who has the note actually coming outside from space. So do you know the name of this man right now?
I am a few months away, apparently, from getting to find out who he is. He's aware that I have embraced Islam. My story is very well known in Afghanistan now. I've been back to Afghanistan a few times. And last month I was in South Africa and I was sharing a platform with Mullah Abdul Salam Zaif, the former Taliban ambassador. And he was the man who stood up and gave a press conference after being involved in negotiating for my release. And I reminded him at this event that we were at. I said, you stood up in front of the world's media and you said we are releasing the English woman, she's a very bad woman with a very bad mouth. And he smiled and I said, now look at us. If somebody had told me all those years ago when I attended your very first press conference that you and this man will no longer be enemies and you'll share a platform and you'll be talking together about unity and justice, I wouldn't have believed it. I said, but furthermore, I said, look, I said, I'm addressing you now as my brother in Islam. And it was quite a moving time to meet him. You know, there was that mutual respect there.
Thank you, Sister, for your speech. I just have a question. Given your unique experience, we often events happening in the Muslim world are so fast, and sometimes it's very hard to keep up what's going on in all Muslim countries, and sometimes it's very hard to justify or to make sense of it all. And in a group of people or friends, or Muslim friends, we find it, like sometimes hard to agree on a particular thing. So, in your view, what's lacking or what's needing to have in the Muslim world to have to actually make sense of Islam or defend the Islam position on lots of things that's happening on every day?
Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar.
I'll answer this question and then we can pray. I said before that the Muslim community is very diverse. And mashallah, the sister told me earlier today, 42 different nationalities or backgrounds are represented. I've been given 10 minutes under them. And I think that, you know, one of the things that really drew me to Islam was the theme of justice running through every page of the Holy Quran. And as a Christian, I had been taught to do good things and be too nice to your neighbour and be happy. And it's the easiest thing in the world, you know, to be nice to people and to go around with a smile on your face and doing good things. But what impressed me about Islam was that we give justice in equal measure, not only to our friends and family, but to our enemies as well. And when we see things unfolding, we know in our heart are wrong, even if it comes from within our own community. We should have the courage to say, this is wrong. And it is very difficult in these times because the situation in the Middle East at the moment, it's on fire and it's in chaos. And it's very difficult to see exactly what is happening. So I can see that, you know, in some communities there will be tensions as a result of it. But we have to remember who we are. We're Muslims. Justice is a very strong theme. And if something is wrong, even if it's from within the family and it's wrong, then we have to say. And it might not be the answer that you want, but that is the only answer that I can give. And it's a very changing situation. It's becoming more difficult to tell the heroes from the villains. But you know, God gave us a great mind, and we have to use it and go beyond the headlines and do our own analysis and research to try and make sense of some of the crazy things that are happening in the world today.
Your coming into Islam would have created ripples, both good and bad. Can you just enlighten us as to what was the effect around you?
The one I think of more than anything was my mother's reaction. She was delighted that I'd stopped smoking and drinking and was leading a much more orderly and meaningful life. But when I put on the hijab, she said, "Oh, you're becoming an extremist." There are no Muslims in my mother's village. She lives in this up in the northeast of England, and her reaction to my embracing Islam was to go back to church again. And I said, "Well, this is great. You're getting spirituality back in your life." And I said, "You know, Mother," I said, "there are so many things that you do that are quite Islamic. It's not a great leap to make." And she said, "Oh, I don't want to get involved in a newfangled Arab religion." And I said, "Well, where do you think Jesus comes from? Manchester?" And she started to think about it. And for the first time in her life, she began to realize that the roots for Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are all in the same soil and spring from the same area. So, you know, please make dua. It's one of my greatest regrets that my late father was starting to open up to Islam and I didn't follow through with it. And my father was very critical of my embracing Islam. He was quite distraught about it. And it led to all sorts of family arguments, especially over food, and halal food and non-halal food. And one day I came back from an event I'd been to, and I had been presented with a great big frame. And he said, what have you got? And I said, "Oh, I was given this frame." And he said, what is it? And I said, it is the farewell speech of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he said, oh, let me have a look at it. And he was going to be quite dismissive, I know, and he looked at it, and he started reading it, and then he was reading it, and tears came to his eyes, because not even the most hardened atheist could look at that speech and say, it's rubbish. Nobody could disagree with a single word, I think, of that speech, which often prompts me when people say that they're interested in Islam, or people come to me and say, I have a friend who's interested in Islam, you know, how do I go about helping them? I always say, start at the end first. Give them the farewell speech to read. And after my father had read it, he said, can I put this up on the wall? And I said, yes, and it's still up on the wall in the family house. And I just wish I had followed through with some more information for him, because he died very suddenly a few weeks later without warning, and you know, it was a missed opportunity. And I don't want the same thing to happen to my mother, but she's quite a tough cookie to crack, so please make dua for me.
Excuse me if I just may say that the mere fact that your father has acknowledged in his own way, to me, sounds that that was the answer. He had received it, and Allah knows exactly the time when each of us have to depart, and I think you have no worries.
I think we've got time for one quick question.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, of course.
Thank you for your talk about, specifically about feminism in the Muslim world. And obviously there are examples of not being able to drive in Saudi Arabia, which are despicable, and everyone, from the Western world looks at it and thinks, oh, look at Islam, look at the Muslim world, how terribly they handle Muslims. And obviously that's an issue to address. But my question is, to you being a Muslim in the Western world, what issues of feminism do you deal with about being a Muslim in the Western world? So it's not to do with you can drive where you want, you can be a member of parliament. What issues would you like to see improved for women living in the West and being Muslim?
I'm reading Julia Gillard's book at the moment. I would just like to see the lot of women, regardless of faith or no faith, improving. And what she had to face in the heart of the Australian government is quite shocking. And she was, at one point, Australia's most powerful female. Unfortunately, women of faith and no faith have a long way to go. Our advantage of Muslim women, as Muslim women, is we have the Holy Quran. It's set out there. It's a blueprint for women's rights. And we have to enforce that. And the only way that we can do that is through education. And education is the key. I said at the beginning, the mother is the madrasa. The first point of education in the home is the mother, and the role of the mother is vitally important. And if she can teach her sons and daughters about the equality within the pages of the Holy Quran, if she can pass down that precious message, then that is a good way to making progress. But unfortunately, there are, as I say, patriarchal communities where women will be subjugated and oppressed. But it's not a faith problem. It's a global problem.
And isn't that why we need more understanding of one another?
Yes.
Because we, in these countries, cultures. I mean, it doesn't just come like that. So this is a natural thing to happen, but we still need that understanding, and we have to find a way of doing it. Britain has a very good way, I understand, bringing that into the school, but it's taken out here. But we should somehow find that way of understanding. Understanding is the word, I think it's the key word.
No, thank you.
Sister Yvonne, just before you finish, Sarah, would you like to just give to our speaker?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful speech, Sister Yvonne. And I hope you see this is your best trip to Wellington, but I hope it won't be the last one. I hope in the near future, anytime if you are coming to offshore, keep in touch, and we hope to see again and again. Now